Welcome everyone to this week's video. Today we are on Fish Friday number 251 and we have a good one for you today. Today's fish is one of the more popular fish in the aquarium trade for good reason and is one of these fish that I actually highly recommend for people who are just starting out with aquarium. And for multiple reasons, but number one, it is by far one of the most beautiful fish you will ever see. Today's fish that we're going to be talking about is bam! The Cockatoo Dwarf Cichlid. Now, the Cockatoo Dwarf Cichlid, or scientific name Apistogramma cacatuoides, again, that's Apistogramma cacatuoides, it is part of the family Cichlidae, which is the family of cichlids, and it's more specifically part of the genus Apistogramma, which is the genus of dwarf cichlids. And a world of research has been done on Apistogramma, and it is probably second only to the African cichlids in terms of the most popular cichlids available in the aquarium trade. And we'll get more into this, but as you can easily see from this picture, there's good reason why people want to buy this fish and have it and be able to look at it whenever they want. But the Cockatoo Dwarf Cichlid is native, as most other Apistogrammas, to the Amazon River basin. And it's more so found in the countries of Peru and Colombia, I believe. I don't believe it's found too much elsewhere apart from that. But you're going to find this fish in the wild in these small, shallow streams with lagoon-like waters. So your slower moving tributaries that have partial shade, usually with leaves along a sandy substrate. You know, I'm describing this, but kind of picture any of the smaller streams that you would think of near the Amazon River. And that's kind of what the habitat that this species is going to live in. Naturally, so it's pretty broad spread, which is great because then that means that this fish is in no danger of habitat loss other than the sort of traditional habitat loss that happens throughout the Amazon basin, which there's plenty of, but not necessarily this one. Now this is a small fish, as the genus named dwarf cichlid would kind of imply. The males will get up to around 8 centimeters, which is around 3.1 inches, and the females will get up to about 5 centimeters, which is 2 inches. And while I personally have seen cacatuoides getting up to that 3-inch mark, I have never, and would be shocked to actually find a female get up to 2 inches. Usually males are around double the size of females in the aquarium. Very, very good difference between the two. But as you can tell, that's still a fairly small fish, which is one of the reasons why I do encourage this fish. You don't need a very large aquarium setup to have an Apistogramma tank. You can't put too much else in there, but you can create an Apistogramma tank, at least for this, for very, very reasonable in cost. Now they are laterally compressed, as are most cichlids, meaning they're kind of squashed in from side to side. The males are going to be much more colorful. I should mention they do have, as with most cichlids, they have this very large mouth. Kind of interesting with cacatuoides is they do have thicker lips, at least in my experience, compared to the other Apistogrammas, but they are going to be laterally compressed, as with most cichlids, so they're kind of squashed from side to side. Oops, sorry, hit my mic. And the males are going to be much more colorful in there, and that's not necessarily that uncommon in the fish world, but the difference between the two is actually quite striking. So we have here a picture of cacatuoides, and you can see the male in the background and then this female in the front. I believe these are cacatuoides. Fairly certain they are, but Apistogrammas kind of get blended in together. So, but this is a good example of sort of both the size difference and the color difference. And I should make it very clear, This is a breeding female. The females get much more colorful when they're breeding or they're protecting their brood. So if this is what they look like in breeding, you can imagine how how plain the female actually looks when it's outside of breeding season. But the males have these much more colorful. Most of the time I see them much more with this orange dorsal fin, kind of the yellow belly, coloration on the fins, with these elongated spines on the front part of the dorsal. That's where it gets its nickname, the cockatoo, actually. Now both can have this stripe going down the side as well. It's a lot more prevalent in females, but one of the better characteristics that I like using is actually this diagonal stripe going from the bottom of the eye to the back of their gill, or to the bottom of their gill. It's a pretty good indicator that I like using. If there are other indicators, please let me know. But you can see even from these two pictures that there are different colors, and that's it's not just these. There are a world of colorations out there. This one I think is the orange flame. This is double red. I'm not entirely sure. If you get involved in the aquarium world, especially heavily into apistogrammas, apistogramma people are very much like the armored catfish people. I'm not gonna say they're crazy, but both apistogramma people and your loricarid people, the whip-tailed armored catfish people, they will go absolutely bonkers over a weird color morph that has never been seen, which is one reason why the price on, I can't even give you a price, even though it's part of the aquarium. You can find them as cheap as a couple of bucks. There have been some color morphs that have gone for $300-400 per fish. So that's why it's very difficult. And there's a world of color morphs out there, and there's a whatever you think the number is, double it, and that will be the actual color morph that you can find completely. They all look unique. They all look amazing. All apistas do. But I'm not a color morph sort of person, so I'm not going to be able to tell you, oh, it's this color morph, that color morph. But you can see from the pictures, they're extremely impressive colorations and extremely impressive fish. And they are omnivores, as are most cichlids, and which basically mean they can eat anything. And that is why the colors and diet make it so popular in the aquarium trade. And for good reason. They're one of the best cichlid species to start out with. Like I said, they can be extreme, you can put them in a fairly smaller tank, not tiny tank, but a smaller tank, and they can be very happy. They just require a lot of vegetation. They like a lot of cover. Because they're omnivores, you can get them to basically eat anything you give them. You don't want to provide them a varied diet. So you can't just throw fish flakes, but you can throw fish flakes and shrimp pellets and then some spirulina flakes, and they'll be perfectly happy and they would absolutely love their life. But they can be territorial, males more so than females, but females can get territorial around brood protecting. And this is an example of a species where you would want essentially a harem. You want one male with multiple females. If you have a large enough aquarium, you can start doing multiple males, but really you want one male to multiple females. And you want to keep them with other peaceful tank mates just in case from there. But for the interesting fact we're going to end the video on, it kind of relates to the Mother's Day special that we did last week. Talking about their reproduction. The female will place their eggs inside the roof of the cavity, so this would be one of those cavity nesters that I've talked about. That's where they prefer. She will do it on the underside of a leaf, but what happens there is the female guards the eggs, and the male guards the territory. And a little side deal about it, the eggs are actually salmon colored, which is really neat. So the female is taking care of the eggs and the fry, whereas the male is protecting the territory. So the male is actually protecting all of them. But one of the more interesting sort of traits of cacatuoides that many people might have heard of that we didn't really talk about in terms of spawning is they're one of the better examples of Apistogrammas having what are called sneaker males. And you might have heard the term sneaker male in the past, and it's for good reason. It's kind of a ingenious way for males that aren't necessarily large enough to reproduce. Because males can be so aggressive, especially around breeding time, a smaller male, and this is more so in the wild, but a smaller male will actually just not develop the full sort of cockatoo spines that are going along the dorsal fin, and will kind of stay pretty muted in color. And what happens, he actually pretends to be a female, and if the male gets distracted when the female starts laying eggs, he will present himself to the female and actually go in and try and fertilize the eggs. It's not successful, but it does happen enough that it was, fairly good. But what's interesting is what happens if the larger male dies. Usually males are the sneaker males are hanging out along the edge. If the alpha male sort of dies, then one of the submissive males will actually start taking his place and will very, very quickly develop all the finnage and coloration that the alpha male had. So it's a really kind of, I don't want to say unique, but a really neat adaptation for males that don't necessarily have a chance to fight for a female. It still allows them to pass on their genetic material and sort of sit around hoping that they can outlive the alpha male and survive and become the alpha male at a later time. Just a really kind of neat thing, and it's probably the easiest to see in cacatuoides versus the other Apistogrammas, but really, really neat fish, absolutely beautiful, just beautiful. But thank you guys so much again. I really appreciate it. Hope to see you again. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you do. I'd really appreciate it. Hope to see you again. If you'd like to support the channel, please click the link down below. It is by no means expected, but very much appreciated regardless. Take care of yourself, take care of your loved ones, and peace.